Hi, it's Dr. Phoenix. Today I'm going to be using a spreadsheet to show you how to make a graph. And I'm going to be using Excel. Excel is probably the most common spreadsheet on the market, but there are others, and they all work fairly similar to this. But I want you to see how easy it is to make a graph using a spreadsheet. Let's say we have a set of data from our class lab where we're doing a lab on the effect of different amounts of fertilizer on the growth of a certain type of plant. Well, we certainly can take this data and we can plot it on a graph by hand, and that wouldn't be that hard, but I want you to see how to do that on a spreadsheet. This is Excel. It's version 2010. You may have a different version and it may look just slightly different than this. And I am certainly no expert on Excel, but I'm learning how to use it, and it is really quite fun when you start to learn some of the things that Excel can do, and you can make Excel work for you. So you can build a table in Excel like I have here on the left. When you do build your tables, you should always put your independent variable in the left column and your dependent variable on the right. You can also copy and paste a table from another document. For instance, if it was in Word or another spreadsheet, you could copy and paste it just as easily. But I've already put the table here, and what you do if you want to make a graph from this table is highlight the table like so and go to Insert, and I'm going to choose a scatter plot graph because this is comparing one set of how one variable affects another. So I'm going to choose scatter plot, and I'm not going to have it put lines on it. I'm just going to have it put the data. Alright, so here's the table that comes, or I'm sorry, here's the graph that comes up from this set of data. And that looks pretty nice, but we can make it look a little bit better. First of all, it's just one set of data, so we can get rid of this here, and that will make it a little bit bigger. Remember, the objective in graphing is to make the graph fill the available space. All right, it's given us a title already. That title is not very descriptive. We want our title to tell us as much information as possible. It certainly should tell us what the independent and the dependent variables are. So let's change the title to, say, effect of fertilizer on plant growth. Okay. All right. Now, as we look at the axes and compare them to the numbers in each column, fertilizer is going to be our independent variable, which will go on the x-axis. Our lowest number is 2, so we can change the numbers on this axis by clicking on, we can click on the axis down here and then right click and go down to Format Axis. And we can change the minimum and the maximum values. Click on fixed and change the minimum value to 2. And the maximum value is 12, so let's change that to 12. And I'll close that. And you can see we now go from 2 to 12. And let's change the vertical axis or the y-axis as well. I'm going to highlight that and then right click on it, format axis, the minimum. Let's change the minimum to 18 is the smallest number, so let's change it to 15. And the maximum, excuse me, the maximum is 98. I'm going to change that to 105. You might say, why not 100? Because I've already tried it and I like 105 better, and you'll see why in just a minute. And I'll close that. Okay. When I put 100, it didn't show 100 here because this is in increments of 10. So when I put 100 there, it didn't show it, so I went ahead and put 105, so it put a top label there. All right, so now you can see that our data points are spread throughout the entire graph. Now we're still missing some things. We don't have labels on the X and the Y axis. So to get labels, let's go to, let's see, where am I? Okay, first I've got to click on, see, I told you I'm not an expert. I've got to click on the graph first, and it pulls up this chart tools. I'm going to go to layout and then click on axis titles, and I'll choose the horizontal axis first and then the title below the axis. All right, so you can see that that pops up right there. I'm going to highlight that. I'm going to put fertilizer down here, parentheses, grams. You always want to put the units next to the label. All right, so that's not really big enough, so I'm going to highlight that. I'm going to go back to home, and I'm going to change the font size to 18 and make that a little bit bigger. Right, now I want to put a label on the y-axis. Again, make sure you have to make sure you're clicked on the graph. Again, go to layout, axis titles. We're going to do the vertical axis this time, and I'm going to do rotated title. And let me click in there, and I'm going to call this plant growth, and that's going to be in centimeters. Again, that's not quite big enough. I'm going to go to home and move that to 18 font. All right, so that looks pretty. I'm going to center this title a little bit by clicking on it and just dragging it. All right, now I want to put a line with my data points. The way I'm going to do that is just click on one of the data points, and you'll see that they'll have little blocks form around them. And then again, I will right click and go down to add a trend line. Right, you can see I put a linear line on there. Sometimes a best fit line is linear. This doesn't look quite accurate, so I'm going to just kind of change and see which line kind of fits it the best. And I kind of like that polynomial. It looks like it goes through the majority of the points. All right, so there's your graph next to your table with a line that goes through the majority of the data points.